Yeah, there's a lot going on. We're sort of in the home stretch, although I think that home stretch continues to stretch a little bit. um, the renovation has been quite a process. You know, it's an old building. It's a historic building. The original part of the building dates to about 1800, and so as a result of that, the building has been added on to many, many times, sometimes well and sometimes not so well. We had a great amount of structural repair that we needed to do. We basically rebuilt the entire foundation of the building. Um, and we're at a point now where we're just about finishing up sort of the second to last phase, and that is the exterior renovation. So as you can see, as you look around the building, where the windows are in, there's sheathing and Tyvek wrap on. We've also started to put the old siding back on. We were able to preserve quite a bit of the siding that was on the building that was uncovered when we took the wood shingles off. There was lap siding, clapboard siding, I should say. And that clapboard siding is going to mainly dress the two sides of the building. So the side that faces Fountain Park and the side that faces Washington Avenue, so that as you're approaching our building on Spring Avenue, you're seeing original siding, which is pretty cool. We'll have to replace the front and back with new siding. But that was simply a matter of the fact that, you know, the building was so old, there was a lot of water damage, there was a lot of rot. So but it's really looking great, and it's exciting because I think at this point people can really see what's going on, and see what it's going to be. The inside is even more exciting from my perspective. We've got this gorgeous gallery space. It's about 1,000 square feet. It's a wide open room with no beam, you know, no posts or anything supporting the ceiling. We put in engineered structural beams to hold up the second floor. So we've got this big wide open space that goes from front to back on the west side of the building. It's going to be used for gallery exhibits. It's going to be used for workshops, for small performances and poetry readings. Certainly any of the educational program that we do, there's plenty of room to bring in students for programs. And also hopefully as a community gathering space. I mean, that really is the intention. You know, when we were outside, one of the really exciting things to me is the addition of the front porch. I think the front porch is so critical. It's not an original feature. It makes it much more a 19th century house than an 18th century house. At the same time, it is something that just sort of screams, welcome, come in, we want you to come in. The reason for the building, in my mind, we bought this building in 2017, the Kent County Arts Council, now Kent Cultural Alliance. And the intention behind it was to use the second floor for a brand new visiting artist residency program. And so the entire second floor will be dedicated to 4 private bedroom suites. There'll be a large living dining area, a kitchen area, and a laundry area for visiting artists. We will be recruiting artists from all over the country and hopefully eventually from around the world who will come and share their talents with us. Those artists will each have a corresponding private studio downstairs in the rear of the building on the left-hand side. So they'll have a private studio and private living space. The concept for the residency is not completely new. I mean, residencies have existed for over 100 years in the United States. Going, you know, Yaddo and McDowell are some of the ones that have been around for a really, really long time. But the idea is to bring in artists, mid-career artists, who are looking to either perhaps expand their work, expand to a different discipline, or collaborate with an artist from a different discipline. And the idea is that they will basically work under a theme. So we'll theme each of the residency periods, which will be anywhere from 6 to 12 weeks long. And that theme could be something like the environment or healthcare or education or race relations. You know, we have a lot of conversations about that happening right now. We would bring these artists in, we would embed them for a short period with some of our local community organizations who work in that area. That would be the way for them to sort of be inspired to create new work. And then they'd come back to the studios and they'd have pretty much carte blanche to create new works, whether those be visual arts or theater or poetry or dance, that would be based on and reflective of the particular theme that they're studying, with the idea of helping to engage more people in these important conversations. Some of these conversations are really tough, and a really good way to engage people in these conversations is through the arts and through cultural experiences.
That's great. Now, that building's got a little bit of history. That you want to talk about that?
It really does. So we believe the original part of the building dates to about 1800. In the 1840s, a local carpenter bought the building as his private home. His name was James Mansfield. Mr. Mansfield was a carpenter, but also a landowner and also a slave owner. And in the late 1840s, a young slave was brought to the house. His name was Isaac Mason, and he was enslaved as a house slave there for almost a total of 2 decades. Isaac was severely beaten on multiple occasions by Mrs. Mansfield, so much so that Mr. Mansfield, to sort of protect his investment, I think we should say, moved Isaac out of the house from being a house slave into the fields, working on his fields. But Isaac also used to do deliveries for Mr. Mansfield. As a carpenter, he would also make coffins. And Isaac would be in charge of taking the coffins to various parts of the county for delivery if somebody died. And on one such mission, he was also carrying a letter from Mr. Mansfield, and he was able to open that letter and read it. He had been taught to read by a previous owner when he was younger. And he read the letter and realized that Mr. Mansfield was selling him, and that most likely he would be sold south. And for slaves in Maryland at that time, the only thing worse than being a slave in Maryland was being a slave in the South, the real South, Virginia, North Carolina, South Carolina. So Isaac decided this was it. This was his opportunity. And long story short, he escaped. He went through some horrifying times trying to escape. He did go via the Underground Railroad. He made it to Worcester, Massachusetts, where he lived out a long and prosperous life. He was a leading businessman, a leading churchman. And in his old age, his friends and family finally convinced him to write his own story. So he published a book, an autobiography called Isaac Mason, My Life as a Slave, in 1895 in Worcester, Massachusetts. And fortunately, that book has been digitized and scanned, and we have copies of the scanned work. We're working on 2 different pieces currently to recognize and honor Isaac and his life in our building. One is a portrait that was done by local artist Jason Patterson that will hang permanently in the lobby, and we will dedicate the lobby of our building as the Isaac Mason lobby. And the second project is in partnership with the Star Center at Washington College and the Chesapeake Heartland Project. And that is that we have commissioned local sensation Marlon Saunders to write a brand new piece of musical theater based on the book, based on the life of Isaac Mason. There are some exciting things coming up. I mean, I know we're still basically in lockdown here with the COVID situation. We're not gathering in our public spaces. And believe me, that's really been hard for artists in particular. It's how we make our life. We don't create this art to live in a vacuum. We create it to be seen, whether that's on a gallery wall or on a stage. But I think the community has done a really wonderful job of reaching out and doing the best they can do to support us during these times. We know a lot of folks are in need of support, both financial and otherwise, and we appreciate what folks are doing for us. I think, from the performance perspective, both the Garfield and the Mainstay are taking this sort of winter break here to up their game in terms of video and videography and virtual performances and live streaming. So I think in the coming weeks, we're going to see a new high level game coming from both of those venues in terms of putting on performances and doing live streaming. I'm really excited about that. And then beyond that, as the weather gets warmer, we are going to have the opportunity to do some work outdoors. And there's definitely things coming down the pipeline on that. Nothing I can talk about just yet.